The twin suns of Hyrannus Prime shone brightly over a world of beauty. The Hyrani were a gentle people, known across the galaxy for their art, their music, and their glass cities that sparkled like gems under the light. They had never been warriors. They had never needed to be. For generations, they trusted the Galactic Council to protect them. They believed peace was permanent, that war was something distant, something that happened to others, never to them. That belief was shattered the day the Kroth came. The Kroth were raiders, merciless predators who swept through unprotected systems like storms. They struck without warning, burning settlements, stealing resources, and enslaving entire populations. To the Kroth, mercy was weakness, and when their ships descended upon Hyrannus Prime, fire followed. The sky filled with black shadows as the Kroth fleet cut through the atmosphere. Their weapons unleashed death upon the shining towers, sending glass shattering to the ground. Entire districts vanished in storms of fire. Families screamed in terror as the raiders descended. The Hyrani had no armies to resist them, no defense strong enough to stop them. Their only option was to run, to hide, to pray. Every channel of communication was filled with desperate voices. The Council's patrol fleets were far away. Neighbors offered excuses, not aid. Some promised to review the situation, but none acted quickly. To the Hyrani it felt like betrayal. The galaxy that had once seemed so united now looked cold and indifferent. In their desperation, the Hyrani turned to an ancient frequency, a wide-band SOS that carried farther than their usual distress calls. They poured all their fear, all their sorrow into it. "Please," the message cried, "we are under attack. Our people are dying. To any who hear this, please help us." The signal carried into the void. It left Hyrannus Prime and slipped into the black sea of stars, searching for ears willing to listen. The Hyrani did not care who answered so long as someone did. For days they waited. The Kroth did not stop. They ransacked villages, broke into temples, and dragged prisoners back to their ships. Each day the Hyrani looked to the skies, hoping to see council fleets arrive. Each day the sky remained empty. Fear became despair. Despair became grief. And still they clung to hope that someone, anyone, would come. Then one night the signal was received not by the council, not by their neighbors, not by the trusted guardians they had begged for, The message reached Earth. The Hyrani had heard rumors of the Deathworlders. The humans. They were a young species, rough and violent, born from a harsh planet filled with storms, predators, and endless struggle. The Galactic Council had warned against them many times. Do not call them, the record said. Do not invite them into your conflicts. They are unstable. They are dangerous. And so the Hyrani had never spoken to humans before. They had only heard stories, tales of impossible survival, of worlds tamed through sheer willpower, of wars fought with terrifying ferocity. When the message went out, the Hyrani did not even expect the humans to hear it. Even if they did, surely they would ignore it. Surely they would stay away as they always had. But the humans did not stay away. On the seventh day, as smoke still rose from broken cities and the cries of the dying filled the air, a shadow appeared in orbit. A single ship. Its hull was black, its engines silent. It bore no colors of the council, no banners of peace, only a sharp and heavy presence. At first the Hyrani wept with relief. Someone had come. Their prayers had been answered. They gathered in the ruins of their cities, clinging to one another as they looked to the sky. The invaders would finally be stopped. The nightmare would end. But as the dark vessel circled their world, no greetings came. No soft voices promising safety. No words of comfort. Only silence. And in that silence a cold dread settled in the hearts of the Hyrani. They had sent an SOS into the stars, and it had reached the Deathworlders. They had not yet understood what that meant. The Hyrani had always trusted the Galactic Council. To them, the Council was the voice of wisdom, the hand that guided civilizations, the shield that protected the weak. But when the Croth descended upon their world, that shield had been absent. Messages were sent, coded requests for military response, but the Council offered only words, delays, excuses, promises of future intervention. The Hyrani realized too late that the galaxy did not move for mercy. It moved for politics, for trade, for power. And Hyrannus Prime had little to offer. So when the strange black vessel appeared in their skies, many felt relief first. Relief that someone, anyone had answered. But relief slowly gave way to unease. The ship did not open channels to speak with their leaders. It did not send smaller craft to land among them, to offer evacuation or food. It simply moved in silence like a predator circling its prey. Its weapons gleamed along the hull, massive and cold. This was no rescue ship. This was a warship. And then the memories of the council warnings came rushing back. The humans. Deathworlders. The word itself carried weight in every tongue. Humanity was young by galactic standards, but feared more than ancient empires. They came from a planet that had tried to kill them at every stage of their history. Storms, beasts, volcanoes, endless disease. Other species fled from such danger. Humans had thrived in it. They had become strong because of it. Stories told of how they fought wars not for resources, but sometimes for ideas, for pride, for survival. Where other species surrendered, humans endured. Where others broke, humans rebuilt. The galaxy watched them grow and shuddered. So the council had made its decision long ago. Keep the humans at arm's length. Do not let them into wars. Do not let them answer calls for help. Because once they became involved, they did not simply help. They changed the battlefield. They reshaped the outcome, and now here they were orbiting Hyrannus Prime. The Hyrani gathered in fear and hope, eyes fixed upon the skies. In the ruined glass squares of their cities, elders whispered prayers. Children looked to the heavens with tears on their faces. Survivors huddled in groups, clutching one another tightly. When the humans finally spoke, their voices rolled across the planet. A single transmission, not gentle, not warm, just words sharp and heavy like iron. We have received your distress call. You are under attack by the Kroth. We will answer. The voice was calm in a way that carried no pity, no sympathy. It was the calm of certainty, of power. The Hyrani wanted to believe it meant salvation. But deep inside they felt something else, an edge, a weight, as though the voice carried judgment. Their leaders tried to send messages back, words of thanks, pleas for careful aid. But the black vessel did not respond. It did not ask permission. It did not wait for coordination. It simply turned, its engines burning bright, and aimed itself toward the stars where the Kroth fleet still loomed. The Hyrani watched in silence. To them, aid had always looked like relief ships, healers, diplomats, fleets flying under the Council's banner of peace. But this was none of those things. This was something harsher, something colder. Mothers pulled their children close. Elders shook their heads, whispering old stories of predators from ancient times. Some still prayed, but their voices shook now. The humans had answered their call, but they had not come as friends. They had come as something else entirely. The air on Hyrannus Prime felt heavier that night, even as the Croth still raided and burned, even as screams echoed from the outer settlements. The people's attention had shifted. The Croth were monsters, yes, but monsters they knew, monsters they understood. The humans were unknown, and in that unknown there was fear. The Hirani did not yet know what kind of answer they had called down upon themselves. They only knew one truth whispered from lip to lip, heart to heart. The Deathworlders have heard us, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The Croth had grown careless. For centuries they raided the weaker races of the galaxy without fear. The Council's fleets moved too slowly, their laws too tangled. By the time aid ever arrived, the Croth were already gone, leaving only ruins behind. On Hyrannus Prime, the Croth believed it would be no different. Their warships hovered above the planet, their raiding parties flooding the cities. Fires burned, screams filled the air, and the Croth laughed as they took what they pleased. To them this was just another hunt. But then they noticed something new in the skies. A single vessel had broken orbit. Black and silent, it moved with deadly purpose. It was not large by galactic standards, not the size of a Council dreadnought or a Croth command ship. But its design was alien to them. Sharp angles, heavy plating, weapons lining every visible surface. At first the Croth dismissed it. One ship could not change the course of their raid. They were predators. They had numbers. They had firepower. They had fear on their side. The human vessel did not send warnings. It did not demand surrender. It opened fire. The first rail cannon shot cut through space like a spear of lightning. A Croth frigate exploded instantly, torn apart before its crew even had time to scream. A second shot followed, then a third, each as precise as the heartbeat of a predator. Where the humans struck, ships simply ceased to exist. The Croth panicked. This was not how battles began. There were no negotiations, no tests of strength, no chance to retreat. This was annihilation. From the planet below, the Hirani watched in stunned silence. Their cities still burned, but every eye turned upward. The black ship danced among the stars, its weapons flashing. Croth vessels burst like dying stars one after another. The night sky became a theater of fire, and then came the soldiers. Metal pods launched from the human ship, streaking through the atmosphere like falling stars. They slammed into Croth vessels in low orbit, into landing craft, into raiding parties on the ground. When the pods cracked open, armored figures stepped out. The Hurani had never seen anything like them. The Terran soldiers moved like shadows wrapped in iron. Their armor was scarred, heavy, but purposeful. Their weapons roared with thunder, cutting through Croth warriors as if they were nothing. Where the Croth relied on brute strength and terror, the humans fought with precision, with fury, with a kind of cold rage that chilled the air itself. One Hyrani mother hid in the ruins with her child. She saw a Croth warrior, a massive beast with jagged armor and blood on its claws, dragging captives toward a shuttle. She shut her eyes, certain they would all die. Then a human appeared. The soldier was smaller than the Croth, yet moved faster. In a storm of motion, the Terran tore the raider apart, bullets and blades working in perfect rhythm. The Croth collapsed in silence, and the human turned, not to the captives, not to offer comfort, but to check the perimeter, to look for the next threat. To the Hurani it was terrifying. To the Croth it was worse. The humans fought like they had waited their whole lives for this war. Ship by ship, soldier by soldier, the Croth fell. The battle that should have lasted days ended in less than an hour. By the time the last Croth vessel tried to flee, the Terran ship had already locked its guns. There would be no escape. The raiders who once burned worlds without consequence were now nothing but debris drifting in orbit. And when the silence came, it was heavy. The Hyrani stood in their ruined streets, staring at the sky now filled with wreckage. They should have cheered. Their tormentors were gone, their world saved. But no cheers rose, because in their hearts they felt something stronger than relief. They felt fear. The humans had not fought like saviors. They had fought like executioners. And the Hyrani began to wonder, if this was how humans treated their enemies, what would they do to those they judged unworthy? The Croth were gone, but the true question remained. What did the Deathworlders intend for Hyrannus Prime? The battle was over. The stars above Hyrannus Prime glowed with wreckage. Croth ships, once proud and terrible, now drifted as burning husks. Some pieces fell into the atmosphere, turning into streaks of fire that cut across the night sky. For the Hirani, it should have been a sight of hope, of salvation. Their enemy was gone. Their cities, though scarred and broken, still stood. Their children, though frightened, still lived. But the people did not cheer. Not one voice rose in celebration. Instead, the world was quiet. Too quiet. The black ship remained in orbit watching. Its weapons still glowed faintly, ready for more destruction if needed. And down below in the streets of shattered glass, the armored Terran soldiers stood among the ruins. They did not smile. They did not comfort. They only moved with purpose, checking for survivors, clearing the last of the Croth, securing the area with cold efficiency. To the Hirani, this silence was heavy. It did not feel like peace. It felt like waiting for a verdict. In the Council's fleets after a battle, soldiers would bring aid. They would speak words of kindness, pass out water and food, offer reassurance that peace had returned. That was what the Hirani had expected when they sent their cry for help. That was what they longed for now. But the Deathworlders were different. Hours passed. Fires still burned in the distance. Families clung together in the ruins. Children looked with wide, fearful eyes at the armored figures walking among them. And then finally the Terran voice returned. It was the same voice as before, sharp and steady, carrying no warmth. A single broadcast that reached every device, every comm system, every broken shard of technology still working. The Croth are destroyed. You are no longer under attack. The words echoed across the planet. Relief should have followed. But the Hirani only exchanged uneasy looks. Something in the voice felt wrong. Not the message itself, but the tone. Cold, final, as if spoken by a judge in a trial, not a rescuer on a battlefield. And then the voice continued. You called us. You begged for aid, and we have answered. But hear this, people of Hyrannus. The Deathworlders do not come for mercy. We come for judgment. The words struck like a blade through the heart of the survivors. Judgment? What judgment? They had been the victims, not the aggressors. Their world had been attacked, their homes destroyed, their families slaughtered. Why speak of judgment now? Whispers spread through the crowd. Elders shook their heads, whispering old warnings of humans. Mothers pulled children closer. Leaders tried to send messages back to open negotiations to explain. But the black ship did not reply. It only waited, circling like a hawk over wounded prey. Some among the Hyrani began to feel anger. They had suffered. They had been wronged. Why should they now be spoken to like criminals? But anger did not last long. Every time they remembered the burning Croth fleet, the sound of human weapons tearing through warships as though they were nothing, their anger turned into fear again. The Deathworlders had power the Hyrani could not imagine. And power in the hands of such a species was terrifying. On the surface, one young Hyrani soldier, barely trained, armed only with an old energy rifle, watched a Terran warrior walk through the ruins. The human's armor was blackened from battle, their helmet reflecting the firelight. The young soldier whispered to himself, trembling, "They are not saviors. They are something else." That thought spread. From lips to ears, from family to family, the survivors repeated it. The Croth had been monsters, yes, but monsters had limits. Monsters had hunger, fear, weakness. The humans fought like something greater, something unstoppable. The people of Hyrannus began to understand a new truth. The Deathworlders had answered their SOS, but they had not come to heal. They had come to judge. The fires of war faded slowly that night, but the fear remained. It spread deeper than the wounds of the Croth invasion. It settled in hearts, in bones, in memory, because now the Hyrani knew what it meant to be seen by humans. It meant standing under the gaze of judgment, and no one knew if they would be found innocent. The smoke of battle still hung heavy in the skies of Hyrannus Prime. Fires burned in the shattered districts, and the air smelled of ash and grief. The Hyrani gathered in silence, waiting for the Deathworlders to speak again. They no longer thought of them as rescuers. Their voices, their movements, their very presence, it all felt like something heavier, something colder. Finally, the broadcast came. The same voice, sharp and calm, filled every channel once more. You called for aid. You begged us to save you. You did not tell us the truth. The Hyrani froze. Confusion rippled through the survivors. Their leaders leaned closer to the comm devices, desperate to hear more. The Terran continued, each word slow and cutting. You did not tell us you allowed the Kroth to live unchecked for centuries. You did not tell us you watched as they burned other worlds. You did not tell us you made peace with monsters while others bled and died. The words hit like hammers. Whispers spread through the crowds. It was true. The Kroth had attacked many races before. The Hyrani had known of it, had seen it happen across the stars. But their world was far from those conflicts. They told themselves it was not their problem. They told themselves the council would handle it. And so they had stayed quiet, protecting their shining cities, living in peace while others suffered. And now, the Deathworlders were tearing open that truth. An elder among the survivors sank to her knees. We did nothing, she whispered. We hoped it would never reach us. But the Terran voice did not soften. You call yourselves innocent because you were attacked. But where was your innocence when human colonies were slaughtered by the Kroth? Where was your voice when our children burned? When our homes were destroyed? Did you send us aid? Did you even send us words? The Hyrani trembled. Most had never heard of those stories. The council rarely spoke of human suffering, but now the humans themselves laid it bare. Yes, the Kroth had attacked human settlements long ago. Whole colonies were wiped out, families massacred, and no one had come to help them. Not the council, not the Hyrani, no one. The Deathworlders had not forgotten. On the ground, a Hyrani father held his daughter tightly. Tears ran down his face as he whispered, "We did not know. We did not know." But deep in his heart he understood. Even if they had known, they would have done nothing. They would have closed their gates, trusted the council, and prayed the danger never touched them. Now judgment had come. The black ship's shadow passed over the ruined city. The people looked up with fear. Some begged for mercy. Others fell to the ground in prayer. The armored soldiers stood still, watching. Not a word came from behind their helmets. They were not here to comfort, only to witness, and then the voice spoke again. We are not like the council. We do not ignore the cries of the weak. But neither do we forget those who turned away from our cries. You called us now because you were desperate. But know this. When Deathworlders come, we do not bring aid. We bring judgment. The words sank deep into every heart. The Hyrani realized the truth with horror. They had not summoned allies. They had summoned something far more dangerous. The humans had not come to save them. They had come to balance the scales. Around the world, survivors wept, not only for the lives lost to the Kroth, but for the weight of guilt pressing down upon them. They had thought themselves victims. Now they saw themselves through human eyes, silent witnesses who had allowed the Kroth to grow strong, who had done nothing while others were devoured. The fires of battle had ended. But a different fire had begun to burn. The fire of judgment, fierce and unyielding, carried by the Deathworlders themselves, and no one on Hyrani's prime knew whether they would survive it. The world of Hyranis was silent. The Kroth were gone, their ashes scattered in orbit, but no one felt safe. The Hyrani gathered in ruined plazas and broken homes, waiting for the Deathworlders to speak again. Fear gripped every heart. At last the black ship descended lower in the sky. Its shadow stretched across the land, swallowing the shining glass towers that had survived the raid. People trembled as they looked up. It felt as if a god of war hovered above them, deciding their fate. Then the voice returned. Calm, cold, certain. You are alive because we chose to act. But do not mistake this for mercy. You are not spared because you are innocent. You are spared because our judgment is not yet complete. The words chilled the survivors. They had expected thanks or perhaps silence. But to hear that their lives hung on the edge of human judgment filled them with dread. The Terran voice pressed on. Long ago, when the Kroth came for us, we sent out our own cries for help. We begged the galaxy for aid. We begged the Council. We begged you. And no one came. Our colonies burned. Our children were slaughtered. Entire families were erased. Do you know what it is like to scream into the void and hear only silence? The voice broke no argument. It was not a question. It was an accusation. The Hyrani stood still. Some sobbed. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Many whispered prayers. Deep inside, they all knew the truth. Their people had not lifted a finger when others suffered. They had trusted the Council's distant promises, and they had stayed silent. Now the Deathworlders had come not as rescuers, but as executioners of history. A group of Hyrani leaders dared to broadcast back, their voices shaking. We did not know. We were not told of your suffering. If we had known, we would have. The Terran voice cut them off. No. You would have done nothing. You would have stayed behind your walls of glass and told yourselves the danger was far away. That is what you did while others burned. Do not lie to us. We know the truth. The silence after that was crushing. The leaders lowered their heads. The people wept openly now, the weight of guilt too heavy to carry. On the ground the Terran soldiers stood unmoving. They did not speak, did not comfort. Their black armor gleamed in the firelight as they watched the survivors. They looked less like soldiers and more like judges in a court no one had asked for. Finally the voice spoke again, each word slow and deliberate. Understand this. Deathworlders do not send aid. We do not come with kindness. We come with balance. You call us when the scales have tipped too far, when your sins weigh heavy, and then we bring judgment. The words echoed across the broken cities. Mothers clutched their children tighter. Elders bowed their heads. The survivors realized they were not only witnesses to the fall of the Croth, but also witnesses to their own trial. One young Hyrani girl, her face streaked with ash, looked up at the sky and whispered to her mother, "Are they going to kill us too?" The mother had no answer. She only held her child close and prayed. But the Deathworlders did not open fire. They did not turn their weapons on the planet. Instead, they waited. The Terran ship circled once more, slow and heavy, before the voice delivered the final words. The Croth are gone. That is your judgment today. But remember, Hyrannus, the galaxy does not forget. If you turn your eyes away again, if you choose silence while others suffer, then when you call to us, do not expect to be spared. For we will come again, and next time our judgment may not fall only on your enemies. The broadcast ended. Silence fell once more. The people of Hyrannus collapsed to their knees. Relief and fear clashed in their hearts. They had been spared but not forgiven. They had not been saved. They had been judged. And the Deathworlders had promised they would return if the Hyrani ever failed again. Above, the black ship lingered a moment longer, then began to rise back into the void. Its engines glowed like fire, and then it was gone, leaving behind only silence and the weight of its words. The Hyrani would never forget them. The Deathworlder ship was gone, swallowed by the endless black sky. Yet its shadow remained on Hyrani's, heavier than any fleet or weapon. The survivors stood among ruins, listening to the silence left behind. The silence was not peace, it was a sentence, a reminder. Days passed and life began to crawl back from the ashes. Fires were put out, the wounded carried to makeshift shelters, and broken walls patched with whatever stone and steel remained. But everything felt different now. Every glance toward the stars carried fear. Every whisper spoke of the black ships and their terrible voice. Children, once curious and playful, grew silent. They asked questions their parents could not answer. Why did the Deathworlders save us if they hate us? Why do they watch us like hunters? Parents could only hold them tighter because deep inside they feared the same questions. The leaders of Hyrannus gathered in their council hall, though it was half collapsed and smelled of smoke. None sat with pride. They sat with heavy shoulders, eyes hollow. The words of the Terrans echoed in their minds. You are alive because we chose to act. Do not mistake this for mercy. One elder finally spoke, her voice shaking. We must change. If the Deathworlders ever look at us again, we cannot be the same people we were. If we are, they will burn us as easily as they burned the Croth. The room was silent. For once no one argued. No one denied it. Across the city, survivors carved crude symbols into stone and metal. They painted them on walls, etched them on the sides of ruined towers. The symbols were not of gods nor of the council. They were of the Deathworlders, dark ships with fire beneath, sharp wings cutting through stars. To the Hyrani, they were no longer just soldiers. They had become something greater, something to fear, something to obey. One night, in the ashes of a destroyed district, a group of children gathered. They placed stones in a circle, mimicking the glow of engines, and stood in silence as if waiting for the sky to open again. When a mother found them and asked what they were doing, one child answered softly, "We are waiting, so we remember, so they don't come back angry." Her heart broke at the innocence in those words. Even the young understood the weight of judgment. But fear was not the only thing left behind. Among the ruins lay another truth. For the first time, the Hirani began to think beyond themselves. They had seen what happened when cries for help were ignored. They had felt the cold silence of guilt pressed against their throats. And now they whispered a vow. They would not turn away again. Stories spread through the survivors like fire. Some said the Deathworlders had eyes that saw lies in your soul. Some said their weapons could unmake worlds with a single command. Others said they were not mortals at all, but ghosts of a broken past punishing those who had once abandoned them. Whatever the truth, it did not matter. The Deathworlders had become legend. In the years that followed, Hyrannus rebuilt. Their towers rose again, though never as tall as before. Their fleets returned to the skies, though never with the same pride. And above every command hall carved into stone was a phrase no one dared to forget. Do not call the Deathworlders lightly. They do not bring aid. They bring judgment. That phrase spread across neighboring worlds. Traders carried it. Refugees repeated it. Captains whispered it in mess halls. Soon the entire sector knew the warning. When a colony cried for help, the question was no longer, "Will the Council hear?" It was, "Will the Deathworlders hear?" And if they did, entire worlds prayed that their judgment would not fall upon them as well. Back on Earth, the Terrans remained silent. They did not answer questions. They did not explain. They moved in the shadows of space, unseen until called. And when they came, they never came as saviors. On Hyrannus, every night the sky was watched. Children grew up hearing the story. The Croth came and the Deathworlders followed. The Croth burned, but Hyrannus was left alive, not forgiven but warned. The people never forgot. And neither did the galaxy. For whenever a distress signal echoed into the stars, it was no longer a plea for kindness. It was a gamble. Because somewhere out there the Deathworlders were listening, and when they came they brought not hope. They brought the weight of judgment.